Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. We are going to talk about the different models that you can use when starting your juice business, models of service, and then kind of talk about the pros and cons of each of those models. And hopefully that will help you to establish how you want to begin serving your products. So the first one that we're going to talk about is farmers markets. And the wonderful thing about farmers markets is it's a low entry cost comparable to some of the other ways that you can do it, like brick and mortar and juice trucks and things like that. We'll get into those. But it is definitely the lowest entry point to get into serving your products. And one of the ways that you can start to look into that is just do a search for farmers markets in your area. And then once you find those farmers markets, you can get information, make a connection with whoever is organizing and running it, and determine, fill out the applications to get into the farmers market, and also to determine, what you may need in order to set up your booth. And at that point, I will say with any of these models, you are going to want to reach out to your local board of health. And the reason you may want to know what your model is prior to contacting the Board of Health is that the rules and requirements that they have for you are going to be a little different depending on where you plan to serve your product. However, regardless of where you plan to serve your product, you're going to need to have a facility that you can operate out of and you can make your juice. So if you're going to have your own brick and mortar, of course, you will have your own commercial kitchen, and you'll have a list of items that you're going to need to fulfill in order to make your product. And if you are not going to have your own brick and mortar, then you're going to want to find a commercial kitchen that you can work out of. And so some of the first phone calls that I would suggest making are reaching out to the Board of Health and finding out what you need in your area to serve your product based on the model that you choose. And then the other phone call that I would make or search is to find out what commercial kitchens are available in your area. So if you don't intend to do a brick and mortar, then you're going to want to find a commercial kitchen to work out of. And just a quick search is going to tell you if you have those kitchens available to you. If you cannot find a commercial kitchen to work from, there are tons of opportunities for ghost kitchens. And what that means is that, let's say there is another business that's similar to yours. It could be a bakery. It could be really anything, especially right now because some folks, because of the pandemic and things like that, they have maybe scaled back or whatever, and they would love to partner with somebody to help utilize their facility. That's something that we actually had done, where we let other businesses come in and use our kitchen during off times so that they could make their products and sell them at farmers markets. So if you determine that you're going to be at the farmers market, you're going to want to reach out to the coordinators of the farmers market to understand what your fees are, and if they have availability, if they have space for you, and then also what you're going to need specifically at that market. Sometimes they supply tents, tables, sometimes they don't. If you are going to be doing samples at the farmers market, if you're not going to pre-package those samples in your commercial kitchen, you're going to need to have a hand washing station most likely. But these are things that each state is going to be a little different, and potentially even each city is going to be different. So that will be a good starting point to contact your Board of Health so that you can get a jumping off point as to what do I need to have in order to start selling my product. And then at the farmers market, they can tell you what they're going to provide for you. And that way you'll know what types of equipment you're going to need in order to put a booth up. So for instance, the farmers market that we went to, we actually went to several different farmers markets when we first started, and each one was a little different. Some provided the tables and the tents and chairs and things like that, and others did not. So that started to help me establish my checklist of things that I needed in order to set up our booth. And initially, when we first started, I did samples at the booth, meaning we had our bottles of juice and I had little cups. And when someone would want a sample, we'd open the bottle, we'd pour it right there, and we'd give it to the customer. However, that did require that we had a hand washing station at the booth. Now, it was nothing major. We needed a pitcher of hot water with soap, paper towels, and a bucket to catch the soap, and a trash can. So it wasn't anything like we had to have, fully functioning sinks and things like that, but we did have to have things in order to be able to do that. So what we eventually did was that we started pre-packaging our samples at the shop. That way we didn't have to have the hand washing station at the booth. And, you've got pros and cons there too. You never know how many samples you're going to need. So if you've only made 100 samples and you've got 101 people that want one, well, now you're short a sample. But if you make 100 and you only have 20 people that want samples, now you've got 80 samples that you made that, so you kind of got to gauge, I think, based on your situation, what makes the most sense. And a little bit of trial and error always works. And after you go to a farmer's market for a while, you're going to start to know what the volume is, what the traffic is, how much juice should I make, how many samples should I have available, things like that. So the farmer's market, as I mentioned, it's a really wonderful way to start establishing yourself within the community. A lot of times farmers markets, your demographic is going to be folks that are already looking for things that are maybe farm to table, organic, things like that. So it's a really nice spot where your customer base is likely going to be, and then you can start to establish yourself within the community before leaping in right to a brick and mortar. So I really liked the farmers markets. It also helps you to connect with your community. It helps you talk about your product. You're going to start to get a feel for what people are wanting and looking for. And really, honestly, if there is a market in your community for juice. So the other option model would be a storefront, a brick and mortar, and nothing wrong with storefront brick and mortar at all. It gives you the opportunity to have your own commercial kitchen. It gives you a place where you can connect with your customers and you can really full service type of a thing. You can set your own hours and you can really create a brand and ambiance within the building. It's a little harder to capture in a booth, but not impossible, like a farmer's market. So storefronts are really great way to, again, like I said, start establishing a brand and an identity and giving folks a place that they can go consistently to get your product. And then you also have your own commercial kitchen that you're able to then work from and just, do whatever you want. So I guess, I wouldn't say it's a con, but it's definitely something that to consider is that if you're going to have your own brick and mortar, it is definitely going to be the, in my opinion, most expensive route to go, because you are going to, there's, so many elements that go into a brick and mortar. If you are lucky enough to find a building that has already been used in a similar way, then you're not going to have to do maybe a bunch of demo construction, things like that. So if you can find like an old frozen yogurt place or an old coffee shop or something that had a similar layout and footprint that you would need to do your production, it could really be amazing. But if it doesn't and you're starting from scratch, it can be quite costly to get that up and running. So again, I sort of lean towards the farmers market as a great jumping off point, because it does give you a chance to iron out some of those initial things that are going to come up. And I'll talk through those in another video, but there's definitely going to be things that are going to come up that you're not going to have known could that you're going to have to work out. And so a storefront is, again, is costly, but it also gives you the advantage of really branding and really just offering your product in a whatever way you want. If you want to serve at 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. or however you want that to look. So it gives you a lot more ability to create a brand and an identity. So let's go ahead and move on to juice trucks. Juice trucks are another really great way to kick off a juice business. It gives you mobility, so you can really kind of go all over your community, all over town, wherever, and generally, like for instance, I'm based out of Indiana, and we do have a food truck association here in Fort Wayne, and so you can reach out to your food truck association, and I found mine through Facebook. But if you go to your farmers markets, it's a really great way to start meeting people. When we very first started talking about doing this, we went to the farmers markets, and I started introducing myself to local farmers, talking to food truck vendors, just to make those connections and start to try to understand what I would need to do in order to get our business off the ground. So food trucks, again, not quite as expensive as a brick and mortar, but they definitely, to fashion out your food truck, it's, there's, unless you buy one that's already set up, again, you go to eBay or, other places where they're selling things like that. You could find a food truck that's already set up to do what you need it to do, so then you don't have to put a bunch of the cost into building it out. But, you're going to have to buy the food truck, and you're going to have to get it certified. So again, you're going to want to reach out to the Board of Health and find out what the criteria is for you to get signed off so that you can operate out of that juice truck. With juice trucks, there's going to be permits and licenses that you are going to have to gather. But again, your Board of Health is going to help you get a sort of running checklist of the things that you're going to need in order to get your juice truck up and running. And a lot of times farmers markets will actually have space for food trucks. So you can participate in the farmers market via the food truck. But that also gives you a lot of mobility and different ways in which you can kind of go all over town. You can do delivery. You can set up for parties, you can, I know I've been to many birthday parties for kiddos, and they've got ice cream trucks, and they've got, all kinds of food trucks. And so you could do those types of things. High school games. I know my son he's not in high school anymore, but when he was in high school, at football games, they would have, they had a coffee truck, and man, that thing was popular as all get out, on a cold Friday nights football, and they had lines around that food truck. So there's a lot of opportunities with a food truck that you might not have with just a brick and mortar, because it does allow you the ability to move about. And then also the last would be to sell online. And I will say really quickly with a juice truck, because they are small, you are going to likely want to have a commercial kitchen that you're doing your juice production out of. Now, you technically could do it out of a certified juice truck, so you don't have to have a commercial kitchen if you've got a certified kitchen in your juice truck. However, it gets small. Those spaces are really small, and if you've done any major juice production, you'll know that you need some space. You don't need a huge space, but you are going to want some space to store things. You're not going to have the refrigeration that you need. It's just going to be costly to do it out of a food truck, to do the actual production. So you can do things made to order depending on your model of service. But I would definitely suggest looking into also having a commercial kitchen that you're going to do your production from, store your produce, wash your produce, package things, that sort of thing, and then use your truck as a way of serving the product. So something to consider there. With serving strictly online, you are definitely going to need a commercial kitchen to work from to make your juice. And then, the cool thing about doing it like that is that it's going to be that would be probably the lowest cost as far as serving the customer, because then really the only requirement that you have is your commercial kitchen where you're going to do the production, and then some form of delivery or pickup would need to take place, obviously. And that was something that we did when we very first started. We did juice delivery, and we did it certain days of the week, and we did it during certain windows of time, and we would just go out and do all of our delivery and drop it off at your doorstep. We also eventually did work with some local co-ops, and we would drop off juice at the co-ops, and then our customers could pick up at the co-op. So there's different ways that you can set it up. However, a key note is that federal law, you are not allowed to sell your juice business to business. So for instance, I cannot sell my juice to another business and then they sell it to their customers. It has to be direct. It has to be business to consumer. So when you do that, it's literally just a pickup point, but you have to be the one to transport that juice and be there for pickup to make sure that everything is stored and transported in a safe way where the juice is kept to temperature. So e-commerce is another great way to start, where you can start getting juice in people's hands. The e-commerce mixed with farmers market is really nice. I would say the difficult part with just doing e-commerce is that you're going to have to do a bit more as far as ads and tagging, meta tagging, and things like that on your website, so that it pops up in front of people to get in front of them, that they even know that you exist. So doing the e-commerce may be a slower start, just for the simple fact that you're going to have to get creative with how to get in front of people, because you're not going to be being visible in any other form. So I think if you're going to do the e-commerce, combining that with the farmer's market is a really great way to quickly, or more quickly, get yourself established and let people know that you exist. Because at least if you're at the farmer's market, they see you, and it's a pickup point, and you can direct them to your website and things like that. So you definitely can do e-commerce on its own, but I would say that if you're wanting to really kind of get things moving, that doing some form of farmer's market or event or something like that would be ideal. And last but not least would be a mix of all of it, or some combination of the four. So as I mentioned, when we first started, we did farmers markets, and so we worked from a commercial kitchen, and we did 3 farmers markets every week. So I would do production the day before the market, and then we would do the market, and then I'd do production, then the market, then production, then the market. It was a really great way for us to get our name out there, because we did, completely different markets in different parts of town. And surprisingly, even though they're all farmers markets, they all had a bit of a different vibe and different customer base. They all shared similar, the demographics shared similarities, because they were all sort of looking for farm to table produce and organic and things like that. But, one that we did was much more, it was on a Saturday, and it was much more oriented towards people coming and kind of shopping. And, there was a lot of more vendors with, boutique-y type things. And so and there'd be music playing, and it was a whole vibe, and so it was really cool. Really enjoyed that one. And then the other one was more, they sold mainly like meats and eggs and produce, and it was during the week. It was like a Wednesday, I believe. And so you'd have people coming in like after work, and they just were coming in, they grabbed their eggs, they grabbed their meat, they grabbed their flowers, and they were out. It wasn't really meant to kind of shop and meander and whatever. But so it was a little different, but very nice. Both of them really enjoyed them, and the other one kind of had a mix of the two vibes. And then eventually you find, well, that's actually, now that I think about it, one was called Lunch on the Plaza, and so it was a food truck event that would happen during the week, one day a week, and so all the businesses around, it would be for the people would come out for the lunch break, and they would come out and get their favorite food truck vending for lunch. And they also had opportunities for people to set up booths. And so we were there. That one, it wasn't, it was great for getting our name out there, but I will say it wasn't one of our highest selling markets, for the simple fact that people were not in the mindset of shopping at all, because they were on a 1-hour lunch break. And two, a lot of the food trucks were not the healthiest, I guess. And so when someone's out getting, a gyro or something, they may not be in the mindset of thinking about like a cleanse or a green juice or something like that. So what we ended up doing is we changed the juices that we brought to that market. We had one that was a huge popular juice. It was called Watermelon Summer, and it was watermelon, pineapple, raspberry, and mint. And it was just a fan favorite. Everybody loved it, old and young. And so it went well with that market, because it didn't hit someone with, well, I just want to come out here and have some cheese fries and go back to work, and I don't want to think about a cleanse right now. But what it did was it gave them a refreshing something to sip on with their lunch, and then also it allowed us an opportunity to throw some literature at them and be like, hey, if you're interested in learning more about what we do, here's how you can, go to our website and things like that. So each farmer's market you go to is probably going to be a little different, and you may have to cater to that market. And so you just kind of got to be willing to be flexible and adjust what you're bringing, what you're serving, how much are you bringing, how much are you serving. As many of you, I'm sure, are very well aware, juice, cold pressed juice, it's got a short shelf life. So you've got to be really able to figure out what is going to sell and how to maximize on that at the different events that you go to, because not every event is going to, every product is going to make sense at every event. So with that kind of covers the 4 models that generally I've seen. There may be others out there, ways to sell and get your products in the hands of your customers, but those are the 4 that we used. And like I said, we had a brick and mortar. We went to farmers markets. We did not ever have a juice truck, so that's not one that we tapped into. We had talked about it, we just never did it. I think it would have been really awesome. So that's definitely one. You could also have a brick and mortar and a juice truck and go to farmers markets and have a website and deliver. So it really just depends on where you're at and where you're at. I mean, that's really all it is, because with each one, it's going to require different level of requirements. It's going to if you've got a brick and mortar, you're probably going to need employees. If you've got, if you're going to a farmer's market, you may not need employees. And so there's just different layers to these different things. And if you would like, I'd be more than happy to go through each one of these and talk specifically about the things that you would need to get them up and running and what that would look like in more detail specifically. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. I'd be happy to make videos on each of those. I know this one's getting kind of long. So anyway, I really appreciate you if you've stuck with me through this long of a video. Thank you so much. I would love to keep sharing content with you guys. It really brings joy to my heart to be able to share the things that I've learned. And so if there's any interest here, I'm going to throw this video out and see where it goes. And from there, I'll just keep sharing what you guys ask for. And so thank you so much. I appreciate you. Happy juicing.